Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sean and Sax show.
Welcome.
We were just joking with everybody because we just got back from Lake Powell
Glorious place to be.
last night. And if you've not been to Lake Powell, it's my favorite place on earth. If I could go anywhere on vacation, I think we did it right. We did it good. We did it good. We brought all the kids. It was a kids' spring break. We told the kids that they could bring friends for half of it because I was like not trying to have a bunch of stinky ass teenagers running around the boat for the entire time. I wanted some peace and some nap time and stuff, but it turned out pretty good. No one died. There were no incidents that I know of.
No, we had some. They were minor.
Yeah, the boat came back intact. The jet skis came back intact. Everybody came back intact. Couple of cuts, some bruises, a little bit of sunburn.
Tyne tried to fight a wave runner.
Tyne tried to fight Saxony's oldest son. You remember when you were a kid? I mean, when you were a kid, guys, you got on some things. You were like big swinging ding dong. You're like, I'm in this game. And this kid he'd never ridden a jet ski before, had he?
I don't think so.
So Tyne had never ridden a jet ski before, and he's 18. And he jumped on the jet ski, and he's ripping around, and Will, my oldest son, is ripping around. Mm-hmm. And I remember we were driving back to the marina, and it was really choppy, and I caught it. I saw it happen.
I have it on video.
And Tyne is ripping around, trying to jump the waves and the whole thing, and this jet ski popped back up and hit him right in the chin, and it rocked his ass, man. He was down. He was not feeling good.
I think that was the worst thing that happened, though.
He was bleeding, and it was really funny. I was like, dude, man the fuck up. Let's keep going.
Yeah, and he did. And he kept rallying.
And it worked good.
Uh-huh. It was a good trip.
Yeah.
A lot of stinky teenage boys, but they were sweet.
If you've ever been to Lake Powell or been at a houseboat, the way they have the houseboats set up, not that this is the houseboat edition. We actually have a really cool topic that we want to talk about. But the way they have the houseboat set up is you have like a stateroom, and then you have these like cubbies. They're like little teeny, 3-foot doors that slide open, and underneath is a big cubby room. It's only 3 feet tall? 4 feet tall. You have to crawl in there, but it's like a king size bed that's inside of this little cubby hole, and it's kind of the kids' room. So you have the adults and then the kids' cubby room.
No window, no airflow.
There's no airflow, zero airflow whatsoever. So you get 2 teenage boys that smell like shit anyways in the little cubby hole. You wake up in the morning and it's just like, what in the flying hell happened last night?
Yeah, they wanted to sleep in there though. They could have had a nice bed. It was really cool. It was so fun.
It was a good trip.
Yes.
But we were talking about that this morning and the trip and the experience with the kids and the whole deal. And we wanted to talk about this because we get asked a lot about co-parenting, about blended families. Yeah. And we've wanted to talk about this for a while. And we could talk about co-parenting and blended families 100 times.
And we probably will.
I guarantee we'll have many episodes where we talk about this and invite some of our friends. But we had some really cool experiences as a blended family, as co-parenting, specifically on this trip. You know, you with Bryn, me with Tyne, Pierce, Relic, the littles, as we like to call them. And I feel we felt like we needed to talk about this today, specifically because this is something that people are always asking us about. But knowing that we are far from experts, I guess you could say, but what is an expert, right?
Yeah,
what makes you an expert?
And
the thing that I love about this podcast, and you and I both talk about all the time, and I think people appreciate, is like we're just living it. Mm-hmm. We're in the middle of it. We're both co-parenting. We're trying to figure out how the game works. Being married, 2 months now? You know what I mean? 2, 3. I'm close, babe. If I'm within 6 months, that's a win. Like if I'm in the same year, you got to give me some credit for that.
I do, baby.
I don't remember anything. Well,
you do.
I remember some things, but dates and time frames I'm not the best with.
It's okay.
We got married this year. Earlier in the year, we got married. I know I'm right on that. And so we're living it, and it's been a really, really, really interesting thing. Being a stepdad, and I've dated before. You've dated before. You've had the intermingling of people that you've dated and their kids, and I dated and had the intermingling of having a step child, but never being married again, really, and creating this official relationship. When you're dating somebody, it's a little bit more. I don't want to say hands off, but it's a little bit more disconnected, I guess, than where we are in being married and literally creating this family and being stepmom or stepdad, where when you're dating, it's like, well, this is my boyfriend or girlfriend and this is my son or daughter. And so
it's almost like the level of commitment to the relationship is the level of commitment to the child.
Yeah.
It's like you're not all in if you're dating.
Right. You're dating and it is what it is, but like your boys are my stepsons, period. End of story. Like it's official, right? And this trip was really good because we did Hawaii. We went to Hawaii before we were married. And it was still there was a little bit more, the weeks were different. And, tell me what you think about this. But to me, when we went to Hawaii about a month before we got married, month and a half before we got married. And you have the interaction. And for me, connecting with the boys has always been a big thing for me. And I feel like I'm good at it. But then when you take the next step and you create the marriage, this trip, in my opinion, was way different. I'll give you an example. Tyne, and you can describe Tyne. You describe Tyne. Before I describe Tyne, you describe Tyne.
He's an extremely sensitive, big-hearted, big-brained, analytical 18-year-old.
Very smart.
Like, so smart.
Like full ride scholarship to a prestigious university.
Yes.
Smart.
He's
not
legitimately
just mommy says that I'm really smart, but no, the kid's really fucking
he's really,
smart.
really smart. With a huge sensitive heart and big, big, big walls.
Yeah.
But a beautiful person.
I've also, and we're gonna be open with this conversation. Tyne's also very sensitive, but he's very insecure in a lot of ways. He's always looking for.
Being a teenager too is just so insecure.
Totally agree. All kids are. I'm not just saying this on him, but I want to share this example of kind of the co-parenting, kick this thing off, like my experience with him, and then I know you have some that we talked about with Bryn, but I have noticed that he's always very frequently looking for your reassurance and your approval on things. Mom, should I do this? Mom, what about this? So on and so forth, right? And I remember, yes, no. I remember it being at the lake. This is a couple of days before we left. And the water was cold. It was cold for everybody. It was still spring break early. And, all the kids were surfing. And my son was surfing and his buddy was surfing. And you could see there was that, like, Tyne wanted to go do this, but he'd never done it before. He's never surfed before behind the boat. And so I'm like, Tyne, you up? Well, there was that kind of that, I'm waiting for somebody to tell me what to do kind of thing. I'm like, look, bro, do you want to surf? Yes or no? Sure. Remember he said, sure. And I said, look, we don't do sure around here. You're either surfing or you're not. You make the fucking decision. The boat's ready to go. Do you want to surf? Yes or no? Yes. I was like, okay, great. Let's do this, right? Put the jacket on, throw him in the water. And there was a ton of resistance in him getting in the water. And you could just tell he wasn't really sure. Like, he really wanted to. I know it. You know it. He really wanted to. You could just see energetically, but he was like really super resistant to it. And something I love being able to get people up on the surfboard. I'm good at it. I've done it with a ton of people, and I'm legitimately good. He's never surfed before, and if you've ever wake surfed, you know that it's not easy to do. It's not easy to learn. So I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And I'm like telling him, this is how you do it. And there was a lot of resistance. There was frustration. He's like, well, the board's doing it. His analytical brain. Well, what about this? And what about this? I'm like, look, shut the fuck up and just do this, right? Just do what I'm telling you to do and it will work, right? And it was interesting because that experience, I'm gonna throw the kid in the pool kind of a dad. You know that.
Yes,
I don't need to explain this to you, but for people listening, I'm all about like, look, if the kid wants to touch the stove and they want to be a little shit about it, just let them touch the stove. And they're only going to do it one time, and then they're not going to touch the stove again because they're going to fucking get burned and they're going to realize that it sucks, right? I'm like get in the freaking pool. We're gonna do this together kind of a deal. We're going to solve this problem, or we're going to overcome this hurdle together. And he got in, and I'm teaching him what I need to teach him and how to do it. And there was a ton of resistance. And I'm like, look, dude, just do what I'm telling you to do. Just shut up, stop making excuses, and do what I'm telling you to do, right? And I went to pull him up the first time, and he started to get up and then fell down. And you could tell there was like that moment of frustration. And he's freezing,
And the water's ice
he's
cold.
shivering, and I'm like, all right, we got this, We did the same thing the second time. And he popped up the second time and he got up and he started riding. Mm-hmm. And even though he was freezing, you could see on his face, and we should figure out a way to like put pictures in here. Fuck it, if you see our social media, just follow our social media.
Just go on Instagram.
We have tons of pictures. But I remember him popping up, and you could see there was that like, he was really surprised. I don't know if you noticed that. He was kind of surprised that he got up and that he was doing it. But like, I was like the biggest freaking cheerleader. I was yelling at him, and I'm like, yeah, dude, hell yeah. Trying to teach him how to do a thing, and then he ends up falling down, and then he got up again the third time. Mm-hmm. But my reason for sharing that is that this is an 18-year-old kid, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not his dad. I'm never going to be his dad. I'm not his mom. I'm not trying to take dad's place. What I learned in that exchange is like, I operate a very specific way, right? Yay, nay, nay, nay. Mm-hmm. Like, get the fuck in or get the fuck out. Like, that's how I operate with my kids. I'm very straightforward with that. Like, there's no beating around the bush. Like, and having that experience with Ty, that was like, in my opinion, our first real exchange where it was like, look, dude, yes or no, like shit or get off the pot. And him getting in, I'm like, no, you're going to do what I tell you to do, and then it's going to work. And it worked. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool to see. There's probably a ton of people that are listening. They're like, oh my God, you're just an asshole. And I probably am a huge asshole. No. But he got up on the board. Right. He got up and surfed, right? And I think something that I have noticed in not just that exchange, but something that you and I talked about when we first started dating that is, in my opinion, unbelievably crucial in co-parenting is not treating your kids different.
Right.
And the same way that I'm with Will, my son, I want to be with Ty and with Relic, right? Age differences, hormone differences, I understand all of that. But it's like that exchange of him kind of going, well, fuck, man, like being kind of stern, you know what I mean? Like that's the way I am with my kids. But then also being his cheerleader, like when he won, it's the same way like when Will's surfing. I'm like, good job, dude, whatever. Mm-hmm. It was the same thing. He popped up. I was like beaming. I was like, ear to ear, smiling. Yeah. It's something that I really feel like we're going to talk through a couple different points that we think are important in co-parenting. But my number one rule is I don't want to treat your kids any different than my kids.
Yeah.
I'll never try and be dad. I'll never intend to be dad. I'll never try and overstep that, if you will. I don't even know if there's a boundary around that or whatever else. But I know that like me looking at your kids going, oh, go handle your kids or go discipline your kids or go talk to your kids, it's never going to be part of my world. No. Like these are my sons now. Mm-hmm. So when we all go someplace, we all go someplace. When my kids get the Jordans, your kids get the Jordans. It's like they're our kids now, and how I discipline my children is the same way that I want to discipline them. The same way that I love. Let me finish, babe. The same way that I love my kids, I want to love them. You know what I mean? Like when he got on the boat, he's like shivering. He could barely freaking, and I'm up there giving him a high five and smacking his hand and the whole thing. And it was just a really cool exchange for me. Kind of the first real, I guess you could say, stepdad, stepson moment where I'm like, no, dude, like don't bullshit me. Yes or no? Are you getting in or not? Mm-hmm. And he did it. And then to see him win was a huge thing for me. It was a huge, I think, bonding experience.
For sure.
If we can call it that.
Well, and that's what's great about step parenting is if you think about like, if you bring value, you're bringing a new flavor of love to these children's lives. You've got the chocolate and vanilla, it's mom and dad. And you bring in strawberry, and it's not that like strawberry is better than vanilla or chocolate. It's just an addition to it. So you get this whole new, these kids get more, a broader experience of like what it's like to be loved, different types of love. You've got hard love, you've got, all these things, and it's like, bring value. And as long as you're being like, you're coming from love, even with your discipline, like I grew up in a blended family and I love it because I had two very different fathers, two very different mothers. And I think it's incredible. You get so much more value if you make it that way. You have to just make up your mind.
So talk about that, because you had a couple really cool experiences, exchanges with Bryn.
Yeah.
This week.
So I'm going to take it from the beginning, which is one of our bullet points, is growing up in a blended family myself. kids are really, really smart when it comes to trust. They know when you're being unauthentic and they know when you're being authentic. And so, when we first started dating, you had said like having a woman in my life with these qualities is really important for me to have with my daughter. Like you just were very clear that like, you had a way you wanted to have blended family. And so with Brandon from the very, very beginning, I told you, I said, I'm not going to love this girl just to not love her later. Like I'm not going to break up with her. So I had really strong boundaries of how I was going to bring her into my space. Because I didn't want to build a relationship with her and then have us like fizzle out. It was like, so I had this level of commitment from the very beginning where I started building trust. And so the more and more and more our relationship grew, the more I grew this relationship with her, but I grew it with trust in mind. My ultimate goal was to have her trust me and have me trust her. So we had our own friendship, our own relationship. And so, she and I have had many, many conversations, and I really let her kind of take these baby steps into like trusting me. I've never been like, hey, come with me. Because she's also very, very, very intuitive and very smart. And so she knows immediately with people if, they're inauthentic. And so this weekend.
Because she's not to interrupt, but like, this is something huge for people to understand. Like, she's watched me date.
Yeah.
Your sons watched you date.
For sure.
Like your son saw you date different people and go through different experiences and have those emotions. And I think that builds resistance.
Absolutely.
I know it did because Tyne and I had conversations around that. Like, mom's dated and there's been a lot of change. And I know Bryn was the same way. Girls that I dated, she just didn't like. I mean, there was just instant red flags. She's like, yeah, no, not happening.
Yeah. So this weekend, it was just more and more and more depth came to our relationship around trust. And, it was so cute because like we were laying on the boat and she came up to me and she just immediately shared. Like I didn't have to like ask her. She just came over, and I won't share what she shared, but she knew that I was trustworthy. She knew that we had a friendship and she could come to me with information. And then later in the trip, she did the same thing. And it was really cute because like she was struggling with something and she came right to me and told me. And like I told you, I was like, I love that like Bryn has gotten to a place where like she's my girl. She knows I've got her back and she knows I'm going to help her work through new experiences. Like she's a teenager, she's dating, she's got all these new things going on and she doesn't really know how to navigate them necessarily. And I love the fact that we've gotten to a place where I can help guide her. Not with unsolicited, information or opinions. It's just she wants to know that I will help her through these things. And it's so freaking, like, I don't know how many times I said it. It was like just the fact that was going on. Like it's amazing. That's the stuff that matters.
It's what matters, but it's interesting that happened with both of our oldest this weekend because my buddy Mark came down on the boat. And if you've read my book, there's two pictures in my book, one of me and one of Mark, and our whole connection came from cigars. And so I don't remember when it was. It was like the second or third night. We were going to go upstairs after dinner and have a cigar, like post-dinner cigar. And Tyne comes up and he's like, hey, can I come up and sit with you guys? And I'm like, fuck yeah, man. And I was like, do you want a cigar? And he's like, yeah. And it's funny because like he's old enough that I don't need to ask you, but I know that you're also in support of that. And so I get him a cigar and cut him a cigar, and we go upstairs and we have our man time. And that happened multiple times on the trip where he would say, hey, can I come just hang out with you guys? And that was really special for me because you got the teenagers that want to just go be teenagers, dick around and get on the jet skis. And
the medium kids.
Yeah, they go blow everything up. And I had a box of fireworks and we want to just go cause trouble. But he was like, oh, no, I want to sit with you and chat. And I remember, two specific nights where we just sat there and we just talked. I mean, with me and Mark and him and Jerem and just sitting there talking to this kid, having him ask questions about like, he asked me one question. I didn't even tell you this. It was really funny. He's like, so what are cigars like all about? It was this really interesting question about cigars. He's like, so what are cigars
why are we doing
like?
This?
Like, what are these cigars like? What's so special about cigars? And we were sitting on the back of the boat. This is when it was just me, him, and Jerem sitting on the back. And I said, well, like, what are you doing right now? And he's like, well, I'm just sitting here chatting with you, having this cool experience. It's like, you're sitting on this massive houseboat in the most amazing place ever with, you know, your friends and with your family having this experience. I said, this is what smoking a cigar is all about. And it was interesting because he was kind of like, oh, like he got it. You know what I mean? The experience of just sitting there, the analytical brain's going in the entire thing. There's just so many cool experiences like that we had that I think we wrote down 5, I think, topics, bullet points that we felt were really, really, really important and crucial in the co-parenting conversation and building the relationship.
Yeah. Well, and I think these things these attribute to what got us to those moments here.
Right.
And so us sharing these, it's like we could go down the rabbit hole in a million directions on co-parenting, but these are things that, like, this is how we laid a foundation to get the types of relationships we have now to where we're building upon. Like, this is just solid core everyday stuff. Right. It's a really good starting point for anybody who's dating seriously, married, trying to blend families. It's not an easy thing. There's a lot of energy, there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of history, you know, stories in these kids' heads, or they always, you know, there's also this like other parent, and who knows what that dynamic looks like. These are things that work for us that have gotten to us a place where, honestly, where our kids have this trust and connection.
Well, it led
with
to
us.
you having the conversation on the back of the boat with Brandon, me having cigar conversations with Tyne.
And me getting the littles in trouble. They were in trouble all the time, and I'm not afraid to discipline them because they both know that I love them, but I'm also going to whip their ass.
Yeah. So I think what you go through the list, baby. What's number one? The number one thing.
Trust, which we've covered a little bit. This is building. There's multifacets to trust. It's really laying down a foundation. Where there's no scarcity within your relationship with your spouse and with your children. It's knowing that these kids can count on you, and knowing that you trust your spouse to then bring your children into their space. Like, you know, I've told you, like, you're a really great dad. You know, and there's times that you're like, am I a really great dad? And whatever that story is, and I do the same thing. But, you know, for me to have my children with my heart and say, here, you know, that's like, I'm trusting you with my 2 most valuable things that I have on this earth, are my children. And keeping that, because what happens is, I've seen this a lot in relationships, is where, you know, you'll get in this thing and you're like, okay, we're going to blend these kids, but then one will try and discipline, and then the other parent's like, oh shit, no, you can't.
Almost like undermining.
Undermine, or they don't, you know, they can't bear to witness this, you know, the hammer going down because the kid's being a shithead. But you can't do that. You're either on the same team or you're fucked.
Well, it's like on the boat. Like when me be like, Tyne, look, yes or no? Are you getting in the fucking water or not? You want to surf or not? Yes or no? And we're like, Sean, like, yeah, the whole thing. I think not understanding the same team, but what to follow what you're saying, I think these kids have got to see you and I being completely raw and vulnerable with each other for them to trust what we really are, right? Like, you and I are both physical people. Case in point, like I'm sitting in front of, you're in a bikini on a boat, and, you know, you're sitting on my lap and I'm smacking your ass or playing with your hair or just being a total nerd like I normally am in front of your boys. That I think for a lot of people, and probably in some of my life, that's a weird thing, right? It's an awkward experience to like be sitting in front of these children. Here's their mom, and here I am, like, with hands all over mom kind of deal. Not like being a total fucking, not being a total fucking weirdo.
Just flirty.
But like being flirty and being me, and you and I think having that total transparency and that I hate some of these words, like, but the authenticity of just being all in helps them see, like, you know, when we first started dating, one of Tyne's things was mom's dated different guys, and there's been a lot of inconsistency in my life, and we've moved a lot, and we've had a lot of these things. And having that conversation with Tyne, I think the more open I am and the more he sees me as being a trustworthy person, like, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to take off. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to treat you like shit. I'm not going to, like, act like a total fucking child and throw hissy fits and go on one part of the boat when you're on the other part of the boat. I think that's what builds trust with him. And so when I'm
They
like, yo,
see us truly loving each other.
exactly. And when I'm telling him to get his ass in the water, he's like, oh, okay. You know, maybe a couple months ago it wouldn't have been there, but you build that that trust. And I think what's really important for people to understand is like, you can't force that.
Nope.
I don't think that you can force a child to trust you, to believe you, because if you have the experience like you and I do, where we've dated for a couple of years, there's a lot of scarcity that these kids are dealing with.
For sure.
Like there's a lot of instability. Your boys have seen mom cry and be emotional. My kids have seen me deal with, you know, intensity and a lot of really weird negative situations. And so they have to build that themselves. Yeah. And I think what really builds trust with these kids, it's step kids specifically, is number one, like being all in with mom. I'm speaking just from a dad's standpoint. Dads, you got to be all in with mom. You can't treat her differently than when they're around or not around, or speak differently. Like you have to be that man that holds that space and shows the fuck up 24/7, 365. For them to be able to believe that, but you've got to be consistent. You have to be consistent, because if you're coming from a place like of a lot of inconsistency, like with you or with me, that's what they know. They don't trust. They don't believe anything different. They don't have anything to believe in.
And your words aren't going to work. It's going to take time.
I'm going to love your mom. I'm going to do.
No, yeah, it's going to take time. It's going to take energy. It's going to take really solid conversations. Yeah.
And it's hard. It's really difficult too, because I mean, using Tyne as an example, like Tyne loves music and loves getting involved with a lot of these artists and really like, I don't want to say fanboying, but he's like a big fan of some of these hip hop artists, and it's part of his life, and it's kind of intertwined in his DNA of like music and really internalizing music.
He literally grew up that way too.
And that's hard for me sometimes, because I'm like, yo, these dudes are fucking rappers. They don't give a shit about you. They just want you to buy their swag, homie. Like you internalizing their songs and words. I'm like, get the fuck out of here with that. And so that's been, you know, a thing to navigate, where I want to support them in that. And I don't want to be that guy where I'm like, no, this is bullshit. You need to change all these other things. But loving them where they are, like being consistent, like with you and I, and then just building that with them. I mean, creating those little moments, creating those experiences where you're not trying to force somebody to move one way or the other, but just holding that space.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like telling him to get his ass off the boat and jumping in, and you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2.
Empathy. I love empathy. It's just you.
Why? Why is this number 2 on?
They're in no particular order. When I was in the shower, I was writing bullet points. It's just the order that came in. Empathy, I love, because you can learn more in life, in my opinion, by being empathetic to others. Yeah. You truly get to sit back and say, okay, what can I learn here? How can I show up as my best self and just hold space for these other people? Empathy is huge, because you think about these. Okay, adults have a hard enough time transitioning and getting into new spaces with new people and new energy. Kids don't get a choice with dating. Kids don't get a choice with blending families. They literally are like, here's your new here's your new mom, here's your new dad. You just have to just be a part of it. Here's a new house, here's new siblings. And they show up and they're like, they're kids, first off. They're like, they don't know even how to process most of this anyways. And you're like, okay. And then, you know, I've noticed with a lot of families is like, there's a lot of like, there'll be a lot of rebellion in kids, or there'll be a couple kids that are just like, fuck you, I hate you, you're not my mom. Yeah. And I grew up with this. I had my mom and my dad got remarried when I was 11. And I have stepsisters and brothers and half brother, and they're all grand. They're all wonderful. But there was a couple that had major issues in this space of when they were little, and they all of a sudden had this new life. And I don't think a lot of adults don't step back and think, wow, like, I'm on board with this because I made a commitment to you, Sean, to build a life with you. Relic didn't. Relic's along for the ride because I said so, because I'm his mom. Now, if I truly want to have the best relationship with all these kids and build the best family with you, it's really important for me to have empathy for each of the children, because this is a lot. This is a lot for these kids. Like, You know, they hang on to, a lot of children, they struggle with like, well, my mom, I don't want to like her too much because I might hurt my mom. And they carry so much weight and like, and heaviness and like, how do I love this person and how do I trust this person? But then especially if the other parent struggles with, they're not letting go of this and they're very toxic, which is common, you know, like holding space for these kids to have feelings and to have, even be rebellious and like just getting down to like being non-reactive and really sitting in that space with them and hearing them and like reassuring them and just showing up for them. Because kids, it is a heavy, heavy, heavy load. And I don't think, you know, you'll read memes on Instagram about like co-parenting and how hard it is to co-parent. But how the fuck do you think a 5-year-old feels when he's got 4 new siblings? I mean, that's actually like Christmas when you get more kids in the house. And at least that's what happened in our case.
Them all. Like, if you're a nerd and they're all athletic or vice versa, then it sucks.
But like, think about it. Like, you've got this new mom
true.
in your house, and now she's telling you can't leave your stuff all over the foyer, and she's always bitching at you. I'm that mom, by the way. You know, it's like these kids are like, oh, she's always on my case. And it's almost like a dance of like, I lean in and push a little bit, like, okay, this is how it's going to be. But then I also give them space to like adjust. And that is where like major healing, huge steps, it's just being a kind person and allowing them to just really like, really feel this and just be there for them.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about empathy and sympathy, and the idea, like the literal visual of empathy and sympathy for me is like, empathy is like, I'm going to stay where I am and I'm going to extend my hand and help pull you to where I am versus going out of where I am. And I think you and I being in a place that we are, where we are so open and we are so transparent, it's a shock to a lot of people. I think it's a shock maybe to the kids a little bit, but being able to be in that place where we let them be the kids. And I know that sounds really interesting, but like there's a lot of parents out there that somehow think that their kids aren't going to have temptations like they had, that aren't going to deal with the shit they did. Like, you know what I mean? Oh my God, I can't believe my kid looked at porn. Be like, dude, you looked at porn too. Like, oh my God, my kid stole some of my wine, and you stole wine. Like, you think that this is different, right? We think somehow, like, I catch myself all the time, and you and I always joke about this because we're like, we're really good. Like, these kids, like, comparatively speaking,
really good.
Like,
kids.
I did some fucked up shit when I was a kid. You did some fucked up shit. Our kids are pretty good right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, drawing henna and getting henna on the boat. I'm like, yeah, it pissed me off, but it's like, comparatively speaking, I lit half of Lake Powell on fire one time.
As an
I'm
adult.
like, as an adult. My kids didn't do that this trip. I'm like, I think we might be winning here, you know? But, I mean, knowing that this is more of a parenting thing than it is a co-parenting thing. This is just understanding as you as a parent, like, remember when you were 10, 11, 12, the hormones you were going through, figuring out what boners were and girls and boobies and vaginas and things and emotions and mom and dad and hatred and your first crush and all of this shit that you're dealing with as a child. Now you're an adult and like, yeah, great job. We lived through that. We went through all that stuff, right? Here we are, 40, 42, 37 years old going, oh yeah. Kids are going through the same shit, man. Yeah. Now add to that divorce, blended families, new siblings that they didn't get to fucking grow up with. They didn't get to pick. A new house they didn't pick.
New schools
that they didn't get to pick. Yeah. Any of this other stuff. Like the idea of empathy and holding space is very, very, very important, but it requires a really fucking mature adult. Yeah. And I want to say this like as direct and simple as I can. Like, mom and dad, like, you got to grow the fuck up. You really got to grow the fuck up. You need to put your big kid pants on right now. And you need to understand that, like, you am acting like an emotional asshole. You acting like a fucking child is not going to lead and help your children at all. In my opinion, it deteriorates their trust, their ability to relate to you, right? Mm-hmm. They need to see that and need to know that, like, okay, like, we get this, right? Like, I talk to my sons all the time. Like, we have real conversations about real shit because I get it. I know where they were. But this idea, like, oh, when I was a kid, we did that. I heard that when I was a kid, too, right? It is time for mom and dad to grow the fuck up. Yeah. And if you're co-parenting, you put your bullshit to the side. If you're co-parenting and you have beef with your ex, handle your fucking business. Handle your shit, because you're doing more damage to your kids. You're doing more damage to your stepkids than you could ever fucking imagine. Not to mention to yourself and to your current relationship.
And your kids aren't your therapists.
They're not your fucking therapists. Like, you have got to get your shit straight so that you can be, like, you can have empathy for these children. And I feel like you and I have done a pretty good job in that. Like, you and I went down the rabbit hole and dealt with some serious darkness and some serious shit. And I'm grateful for it too. But like, we dated and we had our hearts broken and we were frustrated and we had a lot of issues and drama and stuff like that. But like, you and I getting to a place where you can hold space for a child that is dealing with these things and do it from a place of maturity. Do it from a place of reality where they literally trust you to say, hey, can I come sit down and smoke a cigar with you? Hey, can I talk to you about boy questions or this, that, or the other? Like, that comes from, quite frankly, mom and dad growing the fuck up, handling their own emotions, handling their own inability, their own fears, their own demons, to be able to create a true place of empathy for children, to let them be kids, to let them have their experiences and not be this judgmental, you're wrong, you're this, you're that. Bro, you were 11 too. You were 15 once. You were 18 once, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to talk about, this is kind of a combination between trust and empathy, is especially, I'm going to tell you guys a story, is especially if you've dated a lot and there's been other characters that have come in and, maybe I've had someone I dated for a few years, you had someone you dated for quite a few years, and it left a lasting imprint on these children, at least the oldest ones. Yep. And I had a conversation with Bryn a few months ago where I kind of just like opened up it, and then she just went for it, and she sat there and she just gutted out all this anger and resentment, and she just told me story after story of like what hurt her previously. And
with me dating, you mean?
Yeah, with you dating, just like experiences or toxicity or fighting or whatever it was, from in the past. And it was really beautiful for me because I sat there, and this is where active listening is very important, is I didn't have to say anything. She didn't want to tell me for me to give her information. She wanted to tell me, so she, and this is, I guess, me emotional talking about it, is she told me so I would just know. Mm-hmm. It's like when she shared what hurt her, because she wanted to feel safe with me, that these are the things that were harmful. And now that I have that knowledge, I can, hopefully help her build a new reality. And it was a really beautiful thing because Tyne was sitting there at the table too, and she's saying, well, this and this, and she was just frustrated, and well, and then she did this and she did this. And of course this is coming from a girl and her 12-year-old brain and 15-year-old brain and whatnot, but it was still her feelings are her reality, and these are our experiences, and regardless of how old she is, they mattered to her. And it was such a cool thing, is to just sit there and with an emotionally mature parent, it's not like I'm like, oh yeah, she sounds terrible, oh yeah, she sounds bad. And it's like, no, the whole point of those types of conversation is that child just wants to be heard. Mm-hmm. They want to be seen, they want to be understood. With my little guy, with Relic, like, I'll get down when he's emotional, I get down eye to eye with him, and so he like feels like he can connect, and he'll sit there and he'll have his feelings, and I don't try to fix, these kids don't need to be fixed. They just want to be heard, seen, and connected with. And that's where you'll build so much trust, just by having the empathy of holding that space for them, especially when they just have all this like heaviness. Mm-hmm. Tyne does it with you. He tells you stories and stories and stories. Of course, these are just stories, but he's giving it to you as like, here, this is heavy for me. Can you help me with this? Is really what they're saying. And it's good to do in relationships too, but like the kids, like, this is where solid families are built on this type of stuff. Yeah. Solid relationships in general are.
Right. And knowing that, you not trying, like what you said is dead on, like, you're not trying to fix it, change it, place blame, say, well, this person's bad, or this person did this, or this person did that. You know, we as adults, we do the same thing. Sometimes you don't even have to respond. Just let me fucking puke my stuff out and just let me do it, and then we're good. The kids are the exact same way.
Yeah.
Kids are the exact same way. Like, they just don't have the experience that you and I have, or the mental capacity, if you will, or emotional capacity to deal with some of this stuff a lot of times. They just want to be heard. Like, she wanted to connect with you to know, hey, here's where I have been, like, in this reality with my dad and dating and these things. And it's almost like this, like, okay, now you know. Now we've created a connection in the sense that, like, you know what my experience has been. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you hold that space, empathy, when you're empathetic to it and you can hear and connect, like, to me, that's why in times like, hey, can I come sit with you guys? Like, fuck yeah, man.
I love
and he
it.
gets to be part of my world. He gets to be part of that experience because he is part of my world.
Yeah.
And now being in my space or my world, or me in his space or this world or that, whatever it is, it's a huge, huge, huge need that these kids have to be heard, to have a parent or a co-parent that is empathetic to the past, right? I'm not trying to repair the past. I'm not trying to place blame on, you know, this person or that person or anybody that you've been with, or, well, he was a dick or he was an asshole. I don't care about any of that stuff. Like, what I'm showing is right now. You know what I mean? Like, people say this all the time, and we'll get on to the next point, but when you're dealing with co-parenting, especially when you have toxicity in a different home, okay? I hear this all the time. You know, my ex is dating somebody who hates me, who is trying to sabotage me. My ex is trying to sabotage my kids to hate my new person. All of these things, like, my ex is trying to do these things. At the end of the day, I learned this lesson the hard way, because I was angry. I was bitter after my divorce. I was hurting and dealing with a lot of shit. And what I realized is, like, my kids are not the police. My kids are not to be interrogated. My kids are not to be like these tattletales and the whole thing. What I realized, luckily early enough, is, like, I want to be the best version of dad that I can be. So if you're listening to this and, like, your ex's boyfriend or your ex's girlfriend is a raging fucking lunatic trying to sabotage and make you out to be the bad person, you only have one option. You can go, well, technically you have two. You can go to you can go to court and you can fight and you can spew anger and you can do all that shit, or you can be the best version of you. Because I will tell you, as God is my witness, like, I remember a lot more of the things growing up, the way that I felt, the experiences that I had, than what was ever said to me. And I can tell you right now that if your child is in the middle of this conflict between mom and dad, or your ex and your new this person or that person, or whatever, the only option that you have in order to truly connect with these kids and to truly build something new is to be an entire version of you, a full version of you, a good version of you. Period. End of story. Yeah. Like, you're not going to be able to change that dynamic and that reality. And so for me, I want when Tyne and Relic are at the house, like, I want to be that version, not I'm trying to save the world or change the past or, like, villainize this person or any of this other shit. Like, when they show up and they walk in the door, I want them to want to be there. I want them to, like, want to be like, Sean's a badass. Like, he's a fucking cool guy. We're always doing cool shit. We're playing. We're this or that or the other. Like, versus trying to be this reality of changing the past or creating something that you really can't create. Yeah. You know what I mean? Unless you're doing it from a place of scarcity.
And even if the ex is being a psycho or toxic or whatever, even if they are totally out of control, don't have those conversations with your children.
Just be the opposite. Be the light.
Yeah, literally, I was just going to say that. Light. Be the light.
If there's darkness on the other side of the equation, maybe you're listening to this and your ex is a fucking lunatic. Maybe you're a lunatic. Maybe their new person's a lunatic.
Stop being a lunatic.
Be the fucking light. I mean, period. That's literally the best thing that you can do, not only for your kids, but for you, man. Like, for you, period. Like, you and I both lived in places of anger and frustration, and I can tell you that I was not a good dad. I wasn't a good parent. I wasn't a good father in that space. I want to be the light. When my kids come over to my house, when they're with me, this is the light. This is where they want to be. Energetically, psychologically, physically, spiritually. They want to be connected to what you and I are shining versus some other shit on the other side of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Right.
I love that. Okay.
Number 3, baby.
Communication. Communication is important in all relationships. The clearer things are laid out, the smoother things go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you have a job and you get a job, do you have a plan of like, these are my tasks? Oh, it's so nice when things, it's the same thing with blending families. At our house, you know, we have clear rules. We discuss them ahead of time. You and I discuss them. We make a plan. We're like, okay, this is our values, parents, mom, dad, this is our house. How do we want it to go? We have a very clear understanding of how things will go. We then take that information and we take that to the kids. Clear communication. And then we trust that everyone's on board. When someone falls off the ship, what happens? Like, we reinforce the rules together. We don't flip-flop them. We stick to them. It's clear communication prevents massive amounts of problems and resentment, especially when it comes to discipline, if it comes to curfews, comes to, you know, basically everything. Mm-hmm. And especially like with us, like we have 7 people in our house. Yeah. If things weren't laid out clearly, it would be crazy, which sometimes is still crazy. But yeah, just having clear boundaries, clear rules, and that way it's non-negotiable.
Right.
Those are them.
I agree. Like, having that in your relationship is obviously paramount, like, period. But being able to translate that with the kids and having the same thing with the kids, like, you know, you're not calling names, you're not talking back, you know, these types of things. Like, there's no negotiation for me. Like, I don't deal with that. I have zero bandwidth for talking back to mom, for talking shit, for anything along those lines. And so that's very, very clear. It's very well established. And, you know, the beauty of having that with the kids is once they make an agreement to it, like, now they're on board. And whether they follow the rules, it's really transcends every single relationship that you've got. The communication, the boundaries, the what you expect, what you want. You know what I mean? When you can share that with the kids, I think that's something that's incredibly important, especially with kids like, I mean, I say kids like ours, but I wonder, I ever stop and like wonder about other kids. Like, I'm like, where are our kids on the spectrum of,
I don't know, I grew up with a lot of siblings. I think
they're all just fucks or whatever else.
They're all wild.
You know, my daughter, she has no comprehension of time. None. She doesn't understand what time is. She doesn't understand, like, I'm going to be here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, right? And when you're dealing with like 7 people and you're trying to move the herd over here and the one person straggling over this, like there have been times where I'm like, Bryn, we're leaving the house in 5 minutes, and this is what's happening. And there's times where we just leave. Like, that's it. I told you 5 minutes. We're driving off. We're down the street, and all of a sudden the phone rings. Dad, where'd you go? I'm like, I told you we were fucking leaving. Yeah. So you worry about the problem now. You handle going where we need to go. But this is what we agreed to do. Communication, we've said this 1,000 times. A lack of communication is what starts wars. An abundance of communication is what ends the war. Period. You want to have a really, really, really good life, a really good business, a really good relationship, communicate. There is no such thing as over-communication, but there is sure as shit a lack of communication.
And imagine, guys, like, these are so simple, but you think about what you're going to raise your kids on. You spend all this money on organic baby food and all these, like, private schools. It's like, this is the shit that matters. Like, this is the stuff that matters. If you teach your children these 5 little nuggets, and you raise them to be good communicators, to be empathetic, to build trust and have a foundation. Like, can you even imagine what the world would be like if kids, this was so important and in households over, like, you know, all the other things that I don't think are that relevant. Yeah. It'd be amazing. But, okay, 4th. It's one that I
like this one.
I love
like
this
what you wrote.
4th is love hard. There is an abundance of love. You'll never run out.
What does love hard mean, babe?
Love hard means you just love them. Step kids. I have noticed this with your kids. I've noticed this with my step siblings when they were little, with my mom, even with me, with my step parents. It's kids will naturally resist. Like it's a new thing. You're scary. I don't really know how to like feel about this, navigate this, and I literally just grab. Especially like Pierce is like my number one. I don't know. Will's pretty close to number two, but Pierce is like, I just love that kid. I make him uncomfortable, but now what's so cute is he's like, I know she's just gonna love me, so I'm just gonna let her love me. And it's not inappropriately, but it's like
uncomfortable meaning you just grab him and you
hug
freaking
him,
squeeze him and hug him and like
him,
give him love.
and I just love him,
Yeah.
and I hug him goodnight, and I tell him I love him, and every time I'm like, I love you, Pierce. He's like, every time. If you knew
He's
him,
like that with me
if you
too,
knew
though.
him, you'd get it. But the point is I don't care
Yeah.
if it makes them uncomfortable. I am the adult, and to me it's like, these are my freaking kids. Like, I love you so much, I'm gonna love them so much. Why? Because this is my family. Like, I have absolute ownership. These are my kids. This is my family. Like, I love my blood children as much as I love your kids. Why? Because there's enough love to love them all at full capacity. There is no scarcity. It will never run out. The second part of this is I want you to love your kids fully. Like, I want you to spoil Bryn. I want you to just love the shit out of her. And the reason I'm picking on this particular combo is that a lot of women struggle with daughters, with men's attention. And call me out if I'm wrong, but I know I'm not wrong. So,
baby, go on
and
this,
the
'cause
thing
I
is
want you to
it's
talk
like,
about this.
I want to see you spoil, not spoil in like a, like
Bratty.
Kardashian way, but like spoil, like love this shit out of her. Like, build her up, raise her to be a queen, praise her, take her on trips, buy her horses, like whatever it is that makes her shine for who she truly is in her soul. I want you to love her as, like, I want that to never stop. I want you to take her on dates on a regular basis. You loving her, you spoiling her, that attention to her doesn't take away from me and you, and even a microscopic amount.
Yep.
And this is somewhere where scarcity creeps in big time, insecurity creeps in big time. That shit is not welcome in a healthy household.
Yep.
And if you're doing that, check your shit. Get a therapist. Don't bring that home, because you will never, ever, 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 ever have a solid relationship with that child, because she'll, like, Bryn has had this in her life. She knows she has polarity. I have polarity. I was also a stepdaughter. I have a lot of, I relate to Bryn a lot, but love, love, love. And don't, like, people seem to put caps on things. So they're like, oh, that's too much, or oh, that's whatever. It's like, no, like, what's wrong with loving them and like loving them hard?
Well, I love that you shared that, and it's obviously a personal experience that she's had and that you know of, and there's probably no greater undermining of a relationship than a step parent or step person dating, whatever, being, is jealous the right word, or envious or resentful.
It's resentful.
Resentful of having the partner that you're with, the person that you're with, loving their kids. Mm-hmm. Now, we're not going to turn this into some psychotherapy show or episode where it's like, well, then we can talk about me over loving my kids because I'm, trying to then affect the market or affect my person, or look at how great of a parent I am and how much I love my kids.
No,
but really, you're doing
genuine stuff.
Doing that to get attention from a woman or attention from a man. Look at how good of a mommy I am, and you get all these guys who are like, oh my God, you're such a great mom, but really you're doing that just to freaking bring the hounds in, if you will. But there is nothing, nothing that will undermine a relationship more, and I speak to this from experience, than having a partner that becomes jealous, envious, or resentful of your connection with your children. Like, I think back to an experience that I had in a relationship where, I can deal with our shit, right? Me and you and our relationship. But when you cross that threshold and bring my children into this and say, well, you love so-and-so more than me, or you spend more time with so and so, and these are great. These are very real emotions, very real thoughts that can have conversation, right? But when you find yourself in a place of scarcity, or you find yourself in such an emotionally distraught place that you then look at your partner, say, well, you love your kids more than you love me, you have a really big fucking problem.
Yeah.
You have a big problem. What's really interesting is this isn't an isolated deal. This runs rampant.
This does.
This runs rampant in the dating world, in new relationship world. And there's it comes to one single factor, one thing and one thing alone. It's your own insecurities. It's your own fear. It's your own unresolved trauma, your own fucking trauma, whatever you want to call it, unresolved issues. Because how in the fuck would I ever get to a place where I'm resentful of you loving your children? How would I ever get to a place where I'm like, well, you love your son more than you love me? Who the fuck says that? Legitimately, fellas, if I'm speaking to you, who the fuck says that? A little boy says that. An insecure little freaking boy is like, well, I need your love more than you love your kids more than you love me. Bro, get in the fucking game. Handle your shit. Ladies, like, you should want your man to love his daughter and his sons. Like, that's the sign of a good man, is connecting with children and not just saying, oh, well, I popped these suckers out and, whatever, let's write some new shit. Like, to me, that's the sign of a good human being. When you truly love your person, they love their children. There is nothing that will undermine, and I'm not going to beat the horse on this, there's nothing that will undermine a relationship quicker than you being jealous or envious of your spouse, partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, loving hard, as you say,
Just
loving the shit out of their children.
Yep. Okay, number 5. We're good at this one. We just did this one.
We just did this.
Invest. Invest in your people. Invest in time and making memories and building truly just an energetic connection to you as a family. We took the kids to PAL. We took the kids to Hawaii. And given you don't have to do lavish vacations, but we also take the kids out on the razors. We take the kids to the mountains. We take the
game
kids,
night.
We play bullshit card game, which if you want to laugh with your kids, play BS with them. It becomes so much fun. But we make it a point to spend really quality time together as a family. We love making memories. Both your girls, their love language is quality time, so that's double whammy for you. But it's so fun because it's like it builds your family. It builds their relationships. It has them see that, like, it's not all about just us, right? It really makes them feel part of, which then that grows and grows and grows. Another thing is with invest is we invest in date nights with our kids individually. You do guys night, you take Bryn on girls night. I take time to do things. I'm my little guy, he's always just with me, but we spend time with them individually because a lot of times, like, especially with big families, as you have so many kids, there's so much energy, they're fighting for attention because that's just in their DNA, by the way. If you don't know why sibling rivalry exists, it's literally for survival, so give them some grace.
Let them beat the shit
they're
out of
beating
each
the shit out of each other. It's literally, they're biologically programmed to
They're
do so.
They're going to be fine.
So have some grace. But invest in, like, I love when you take Bryn on date nights. You take me on date night, and I love that. And you take them on date night. You do guys night with all the boys. You'll do, nights with just Pierce because he's one that he kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. So that. You're really good at identifying that, like, that one-on-one time with him is special. And, all of this, guys, is like, it's like the glue to just good relationships. Lastly, I know this, so especially with new parents or, a lot of kids, is you forget to invest in just the one-on-one parent dates, where it's like, leave them at home, buy them a pizza, and go out and keep the connection with your intimate relationship, where you can have communication at dinner, you can talk through things, you can hear each other, you can have some awesome sex and keep all that glue in there. But all of these little investments build, it's like they could build wealth beyond your wildest dreams.
Well,
and families.
Break it down, like, for the carnal-minded people here like, listening that maybe don't understand this principle of investing. Like, if you understand investing and if you have a job, okay, and your job contributes to your 401k, your IRA, and you know that this is the long-term retirement plan, and every 2 weeks you get a paycheck and you take X amount of percentage out and you put it in your check, like you're consciously thinking to yourself, I'm going to invest and invest and invest. And the goal is to have this thing on the end that's going to pay you back, that will then reap you the rewards of this long-term investment. Your family's no different.
No different.
Your family
If
is
anything,
no
it's the best investment
fucking
there
different,
is.
right?
Yeah.
Somehow you magically think like, well, I'm just going to, in one weekend, build my entire retirement. It doesn't work like that, right, folks? Like, it doesn't work like that, okay? Neither does your family. Neither does your relationship. Neither does your relationship with your children.
Neither does your body.
None of it, right?
Yeah.
You can't just say, well, I'm going to binge, fast for 3 days and I'm going to get shredded. No, you need to not eat like an asshole for a year and then you can get in shape. You want to build a relationship with a human being. You have to invest. You want to build a connection to a human being. You have to invest. You want to have dividends paid, literally dividends paid by connection, communication, trust, love. You must invest. And I don't understand why it is that this, I guess I do understand why this conversation continues to come up, because at one point in time in my life, I thought working 20 hours a day and providing a big house and a boat and all this other cool shit that I was like indebted to and a slave to was somehow connecting me to my children. And the truth is that it wasn't. But understand something, like you will never, ever, ever, ever be able to get this time back. And something that I have shared over and over and over again that I am fiercely fucking committed to is my time and the investment of this time. There's something about compounding interest. I have to turn this into math that people don't understand, right? You look at compounding interest, and right now it doesn't make this huge thing to you. It doesn't get you all excited and hot and horny, right? But you look at compounding interest over years, and it's a big fucking deal. And you might look at it and say, well, it's just a date night, or it's just a 7-Eleven Slurpee, or it's just a trip here, or it's just a Razor ride, or it's just going out. Like, I'll go get burritos and just take them to my kid's school and sit on the back of the fucking truck for lunch and have a burrito. Like, those are the things that I can't quantify right this second. I can't tell you makes me a better dad or a worse dad, or connects me to my daughter more and makes my son not have, like, this interest in girls or whatever. But I know damn well that at some point in time in life, my kids are going to remember those moments sitting in the back of the pickup truck, having a burrito. I know damn well that, like, at some point in time, these trips and these things that we're doing will pay the dividend. And maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow, but understanding that you have a 100% certainty of having terrible fucking relationships, not only with your intimate partner, but with your children. If all of a sudden you're going to wait 10 years until you're quote unquote financially set or quote unquote arrived or have life figured out to then go spend time with your kids or then not work 20-hour days, good fucking luck.
Yeah.
It will not happen, and I guarantee you it is a recipe for fucking disaster. It is a recipe for disaster. The smallest things, like, truly, truly, truly pay the biggest dividends. You look at people that are wealthy, let's just talk about it with money terms. They've been investing for a long time. They've been putting money away, they've been investing, they've been doing things like over and over and over consistently for many, 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 many years. And that is the recipe to wealth financially, to have more money in your bank account, to truly, quote unquote, retire, if you will. That is the exact same way that you will build real relationships, honest relationships, connected relationships.
Yeah. Is
this small incremental investment of your time, your love, your connection, your energy.
Yeah. Like when I take Bryn on these girl dates and we get our nails done or whatever, and if you think about it, I don't do that for you. I don't do that to be like, oh, well, look how great I am to Bryn, your daughter. It's like, no, I do that because I'm grateful to have a daughter. I love having a daughter. And it's all about me. I don't even sometimes, I'm like, oh, by the way, I'm taking Brandon. You know, it's like, it's not really like there's no keeping score in these investments either. It's like we do them because it's sincerely how we want to show up. Having that type of relationship with her and spending time with her, you know, what are the odds that she's going to be resentful of me and my time with you if I'm investing in her and you're investing in her and she sees you investing in me? Like, where's scarcity even going to find itself if everybody's like truly showing up? You know what I love too is like, well, you'll get phone calls from Pierce and he's so used to them. He's like, hey, Dad, so when are we doing date night?
He'll say now. Like, he'll call me at like 5 o'clock. He'll be like, Dad, you want to do guys' night? And I'm like,
that's
bro,
right.
We're doing it tomorrow. Oh, yeah, okay. I'll see you tomorrow, Dad. He does this all the time.
Yeah, but I love the fact that it's like, it's so within like their vision. Like, they expect it. And so they don't have, there's no lack. Like, I don't think these kids feel lack in the things that matter. I mean, you know, like, we're not talking about materialistic things. We're talking about like, we show up for these kids.
Yeah.
And like, they see us show up for each other, and it's freaking beautiful, guys. Like, invest.
Yeah, me and Pierce would go bowling. That's our thing. Like, literally almost every single guy's night.
I mean, like, kicks your butt, right?
Is we go bowling. And we talk so much trash, man, because literally I suck at fucking bowling. I'm terrible at bowling, right? And sometimes he legit beats me. Like, I'm legit bowling. Like, I'm trying to fucking win, and I suck at bowling. And he beats me. And it's like, dude, he just has the chip on his shoulder, and he's talking tons of smack, and I love every second of it. But it's like, I know that those stories of us bowling when we were kids, like, well, when he's a kid and I'm a kid, Jesus, like, in 30 years from now, I guarantee you, I'm not a future fortune teller or whatever, I guarantee you me and my son Pierce are going to talk shit about bowling in 30 years from now because of what we established now and what we've established over the last couple of years. I guarantee it. I guarantee you I will be, God willing, I'm an old decrepit man. I'll be in my wheelchair. I'll be like, bro, I will beat your ass in bowling today just like I did 30 years ago, right? Yeah. And that's that type of return. That's that investment that you have to create. You have to invest. There's nothing, in my opinion, I mean, I've lived a different life than a lot of other people because I built it all up and then I burned it to the ground and had to go through some really hard shit to figure this out. I don't know that there's anything greater that I could do in my life. And it reminds me of one of the, I forget who said it, the LDS, somebody LDS said, nothing will compensate for failure inside in the home. You know, no material gain will ever compensate for failing inside your home. Like, no amount of money that you make will compensate for failing your children today. No success, no worldly success can ever replace failing inside of your home. And you see this far too often with people that they end up on their deathbed going, oh shit. And they, in the last second Hail Mary, trying to like teach their kids everything and trying to impart to them, hey, go be a good human being. Meanwhile, you know, Dad for the last 30 years has been working 20-hour days and doesn't even know my name. Right. You know what I mean?
And the truth is kids don't want your shit. And it's nice to spoil them, but it's like, how many people do we know with kids? And you know that they just want their parents to be there. Mm-hmm. You can build wealth and leave them a trust and all that, but they truly want you to be there.
Yeah.
Bless their little hearts.
Bless their little hearts.
Bless their little hearts.
Bless our little hearts.
I know, right?
Bless our big hearts. Your big heart.
You have a huge heart.
Love heart.
Love hard.
Guys, we, of anybody on this planet, understand the nuances of parenting and co-parenting and blended families, and I don't think anybody could put themselves as an expert in this field. I think what makes us quote unquote an expert, if you will, is that we're living it, we're doing it, we're experiencing this shit real time, real world, with real stepkids and real frustrations and scarcity and all of the above. And I think this is a pretty good.
I like that we've started talking about parenting.
Pretty good conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's so many more to come.
Anything else, babe? Anything else you want to share on this?
Nope. This trip was so fun. My heart is so full.
Yeah, it was good. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you people are going to be like, you said something earlier, I forget how you said it. You're like, I don't care how they feel. I just want to love them hard. I'm like, hey. Well, technically you need to get approval from your children, and you need to have them like,
I know.
What do they call it? What do they say? It's not approval, but, huh?
Consent. I need
Consent.
consent.
Yeah, I need to hear consent that I can kiss you on the cheek right now.
And I don't kiss him.
Fuck
I do
off.
hug him. And I...
Yeah. Love hard.
Love hard.
Love the shit out of him.
We'll
Hug him.
We'll have Pierce on and we'll ask him if I
That's
force
gonna be
hugs on him.
Oh yeah,
And he'll
totally
be like,
do it.
yes.
It's amazing, and he blushes and he turns
blushes,
red and he
he's just
loves
the
it.
cutest.
He's the cutest little friggin' thing. All right, guys, we love you. Listen, if you got some value out of this episode, please share it. By the way, we're almost at 100,000 downloads. So guys, thank you so much. Seriously, this is episode
so
8.
incredible.
Is this episode 8
This
or
is
9?
9.
9. We're almost at 100,000 downloads, which is really, really, really cool. I don't know if that's a big number, if it's not a big number, but for us, it's like humbling to know that you guys are loving the show and loving what we're talking about. So if you do, please share it. Please comment. Please leave a review on iTunes or Google Play. Leave a comment for us on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube or on our website. But guys, we're super grateful for you. We're grateful to do this show, and we're grateful that you guys are loving it. So until next time, see ya.
Bye.